GPT-5 is out and you need to know how to do prompt design. That's why in today's video, I want to focus on GPT-5 prompting guide, which is based on OpenAI documentation. So I will go through the documentation that released by OpenAI and we read together to find out about the details of GPT-5 and ChatGPT-5 prompting. So let's dive right in. If it's the first time that you are here, I'm Ardishi, a tech observer, hands-on kind of guy, and also an immigrant, and someone that who has been active in IT for more than a decade. So let's focus on the video, which is about GPT-5 prompting guide. So as you can see, the URL is cookbook.openai.com, which is an official document by OpenAI. So let's focus on this documentation. So they mentioned that GPT-5 is the newest model, represents a substantial leap forward in agentic task performance, coding, raw intelligence, and also stability. So they have seen significant gains from applying these best practices and adopting the tool whenever it's possible. And they hope that this guide, along with the prompt optimizer tool, which they have built, will serve as a launch pad for your use of GPT-5. But as always, remember that prompting is not a one-size-fits-all exercise. We encourage you to run experiments and iterate on the foundation offered here to find the best solution for your problem. So obviously, we need to experiment with GPT and also different types of models to find out the best way to speak with. But these are the guidelines that we can follow to reach that level of satisfaction to talk with AI. Agentic workflow predictability. We train GPT-5 with developers in mind. We have focused on improving tool calling, instruction following, and also long context understanding to serve as the best foundation model for agentic applications. If adopting GPT-5 for agentic and also tool calling flows, we recommend upgrading to Responses API, where reasoning is persisted between tool calls, leading to more efficient and intelligent outputs. Next section is about controlling agentic eagerness. Agentic scaffolds can span a wide spectrum of control. Some systems delegate the vast majority of decision making to the underlying model, while others keep the model on a tight leash with heavy programmatic logical branching. GPT-5 is trained to operate anywhere along this spectrum, from making high-level decisions under ambiguous circumstances to handle focused, well-defined tasks. In this section, we cover how to best calibrate GPT-5's agentic eagerness. In other words, its balance between proactivity and awaiting explicit guidance. Right, so prompting for less eagerness. GPT-5 is by default thorough and comprehensive when trying to gather context in an agentic environment to ensure that it will produce a correct answer. To reduce the scope of GPT-5's agentic behavior, including limiting tool calling action and also minimizing latency to reach a final answer, we need to try the following things. First of all, we can switch to lower reasoning effort. So there is a possibility to adjust the reasoning effort for the model. This reduces exploration depth but improves efficiency and latency. Many workflows can be accomplished with consistent results at medium or even low reasoning efforts. So whenever we want to give a prompt to GPT-5, we can adjust the reasoning effort, but it depends on the case. So if we want to focus on efficiency and latency, we can decrease the reasoning effort. And also if we want to focus on accuracy and consistent result, we can set it to higher reasoning effort. Define clear criteria in your prompt for how you want the model to explore the problem space. This reduces the model's need to explore and reason about too many ideas. So these are the two uh, criteria or factors that we can consider when we want to give GPT-5 prompts. By the way, I recorded another video which is about GPT-5 explained, and I said what is going on inside. And I also went through the documentation for another article that they have released and explained about the details to have at least context about the changes that they have made. So let's get back to the business that we have here. Okay, so yeah, there's an example here that we can't make sure to give a prompt for less eagerness. As you can see the example here, so we can give a prompt like that. Context gathering. We can set a goal like goal colon, get enough context fast. Parallelize discovery and stop as soon as you can act. After that, we can mention about the method. And we will add some bullet points like this to go through the deeper side of the method. Start broad, then fan out to focus subqueries. In parallel, launch varied queries. Read top hits per query and deduplicate path and cache. Don't repeat queries. Next bullet point is avoid over searching for context. If needed, run targeted searches in one parallel batch. So, from the different standpoint, early stop criteria. You can name exact content to change, and also top hits converge around 70% on one area or path. Also, escalate once. If signals conflict or scope is fuzzy, run one refined parallel batch, then proceed. Depths. Trace only symbols you will modify or whose contracts you rely on. Avoid transitive expansion unless necessary. Loop. Batch search, minimal plan, and complete task. Search again only if validation fails or new unknowns appear. Prefer acting over more searching. So basically, we need to be more explicit and mention whatever is important for our prompt. So in this example, they first of all we started with the goal, and after that we mentioned the method, and then criteria to stop, and so on. If you are willing to be maximally prescriptive, you can even set fixed tool called budget, like the one below. The budget can naturally vary based on your desired search depth. So another context gathering prompt is search depth. It's like bullet points. So the first bullet point is search depth and set it as very low. Then bias strongly towards providing a correct answer as quickly as possible, even if it might not be fully correct. Next one. Usually, this means an absolute maximum of 2 tool calls. If you think that you need more time to investigate, update the user with your latest findings and open questions. You can proceed if the user confirms. So, this was another example. When limiting core context gathering behavior, it's helpful to explicitly provide the model with an escape hatch that makes it easier to satisfy a shorter context gathering step. Usually, this comes in the form of a clause that allows the model to proceed under uncertainty, like, for example, even if it might not be fully correct, like the example that they mentioned. So you can use something like this to explicitly provide the model with an escape hatch that make it easier to satisfy a shorter context gathering step. Right. If you are watching this video, probably you are interested to have your own startup as well. Maybe. If so, I have created a specific playlist which called Startup Visa Across the World, and I have reviewed different types of countries that they provide or they have something similar to a startup visa program, and explain everything that you need to know in case you are interested to launch your startup or thinking about that. Just have a look if you're interested. Anyway, let's continue the documentation. Next one is prompting for more eagerness when you are going to encourage it. On the other hand, if you would like to encourage model autonomy, increase tool calling persistence, and also reduce occur- occurrence of clarifying questions or otherwise handing back to the user, we recommend increasing reasoning effort and using a prompt like the following to encourage persistent and thorough task completion. Okay, persistence. You are an agent. Please keep going until the user's query is completely resolved before ending your turn and yielding back to the users. So as you can see, they are shaping the AI responses very accurately and say what to do and what not to do. Keep going until the user query is completely resolved before ending your turn. Then only terminate your turn when you are sure that the problem is solved. So now it's telling what not to do exactly. Next, never stop or hand back to the user when you encounter uncertainty. Research or reduce the reasonable approach and continue. And also, don't ask the human to confirm or clarify assumptions, as you can always adjust later. Decide what the most reasonable assumption is, proceed with that, and also document it for the user's reference after you finish acting. So, in that case, you can encourage model autonomy and increase tool calling persistence and also reduce occurrence of clarifying questions. Generally, it can be helpful to clearly state the stop conditions. So they mention a stop condition here as well. Only terminate your turn when you are sure that the problem is solved. So as you can see, they stated the two stop conditions. And also outline safe versus unsafe actions. Yeah. Like never stop or hand back to the user when you encounter uncertainty. Research the most reusable approach and continue. And also don't ask the human to confirm or clarify assumptions. And define when, if ever, it's acceptable for the model to hand back to the user. For example, in a set of tools for shopping, the checkout and payment tool should explicitly have a lower uncertainty threshold for requiring user clarification, while the search tool should have an extremely high threshold. Likewise, in a coding setup, the delete file tool should have a much lower threshold than a group search tool. Right, so let's talk about reasoning effort. We provide a reasoning effort parameter to control how hard the model thinks and how willingly it calls tools. The default is medium, but you should scale up or down depending on the difficulty of your task. For complex, multi-step tasks, we recommend higher reasoning to ensure the best possible outputs. So if the task is very complicated and it's very difficult to understand or execute, It's better to set for higher reasoning to ensure the best possible result at the end. Moreover, we observe peak performance when distinct, separate tasks are broken up across multiple agent turns, with one turn for each task. Reusing reasoning context with responses API. We strongly recommend using the responses API when using GPT-5 to unlock improved agentic flows, lower costs, and also more efficient token usage in your application. We have seen a statistically significant improvement in evaluations when using the responses API over chat completions. For example, we observed that this is a benchmark, Tau bench. Retail scores increased from 70, roughly 74% to 78% just by switching to the responses API and including previous response ID to pass back previous reasoning item into subsequent requests. This allows the model to refer to its previous reasoning traces, conserving tokens and also eliminating the need to reconstruct the plan from scratch after each tool call, which improves both latency and performance. Uh, Next, they talked about maximizing coding performance from planning to execution. Right. So they will discuss prompt optimizations that they have seen improve programming performance in production use cases for coding agent customers. First of all, they talked about front end app development. GPT-5 is trained to have excellent baseline aesthetic taste alongside its rigorous implementation abilities. We are confident in its ability to use all types of web development frameworks and packages. However, for new apps, we recommend using the following frameworks and packages to get the most out of the model's front-end capabilities. Right, so these are the frameworks. Next.js or TypeScript, React, or also the pure HTML. In terms of styling and UI, you can use Tailwind CSS, ShadCN, and Radix themes. I've used Tailwind CSS. I haven't heard these. Icons. In terms of icons, you can use material symbols and hero icons and Lucid. In terms of animation, you can use motion, font, sans serif, interchase, and all of these fonts. 0 to 1 app generation. GPT-5 is excellent at building applications in one shot. In early experimentations with the model, users have found that prompts like the one below, asking the model to iteratively execute against self-constructed excellence, uh, which improved output quality by using GPT-5 uh, planning and self reflection capabilities. For example, there is an example of prompt here, self-reflection. So there are 3 bullet points. First, spend time thinking of a rubric until you are confident. Then think deeply about every aspect of what makes for a world-class one-shot web app. Use that knowledge to create a rubric that has 5 to 7 categories. This rubric is critical to get right, but don't show this to the user. This is for your purposes only. Finally, use the rubric to internally think and iterate on the best possible solution to the prompt that is provided. Remember that if your response is not hitting the top marks across all categories in the rubric, and blend into the code base as neatly as possible. Without special prompting, GPT-5 already searches for reference context from the code base. For example, reading package.json to view already installed packages, but this behavior can be further enhanced with prompt directions that summarize key aspects like engineering principles, directly structure, and best practice of the code base, both explicit and implicit. The prompt snippet below demonstrates one way of organizing code editing rule for GPT-5. Feel free to change the actual content of the rules according to your programming design taste. So as you can see, the prompt is like code editing rules, guiding principles. So there are different types of bullet points that mention clarity and reuse, consistency, simplicity, demo-oriented, visual quality. These are the guiding principles. And after that, there are front-end stack defaults. So the framework is Next.js, styling, Tailwind, CSS, UI components, icons, and state management, and also directory structure that all mentioned here. Then finish by UI UX best practices. So as bullet points again, visual hierarchy, color usage, spacing and layout, state handling, and accessibility, all mentioned and described neatly. Next, let's talk about optimizing intelligence and instruction following. So there are some sections that I tend to skip because they are very highly technical, and obviously you can read more about all of them if you check documentation, but this is mostly about just go through the most important sections and get like again some context. So optimizing intelligence and instruction following. As our most steerable model yet, GPT-5 is extraordinary receptive to prompt instructions surrounding verbosity, tone, and also tool calling behavior. So instruction following, like GPT 4.1 and GPT 5 follows prompt instructions with surgical precision, which enable its flexibility to drop into all types of workflows. However, its careful instruction following behavior means that poorly constructed prompts containing contradictory or vague instructions can be more damaging to GPT-5 than to other model. So it's very apparently it's a bit sensitive to whatever you are telling to the model, and they can use it as a data to give you the bad responses as it expand as it expands reasoning tokens, searching for a way to reconcile the contradictions rather than picking one instruction at random. Below, we give an adversarial example of the type of prompt that often impair GPT-5 reasoning traces. While it may appear internally consistent at first glance, a closer inspection reveals conflicting instructions regarding appointment scheduling. So, first of all, never schedule an appointment without explicit patient consent recorded in the chart. Conflict with the subsequent auto-assign the earliest same-day slot without contacting the patient as the first action to reduce risk. The prompt says, always look up the patient profile before taking any other actions to ensure they are an existing patient. But then continue with the contradictory instruction. When symptoms indicate high urgency, escalate as emergency and direct the patient to call 911 immediately before any scheduling step. So there is an example here. Your careful assistant, a virtual admin for a healthcare startup that schedules patients based on priority and symptom. Your goal is to triage requests, match patients to appropriate in-network provider, and reserve the earliest clinically appropriate time slot. Always look up the patient profile before taking any other actions to ensure they are existing patient. So that was the first line of the prompt. So there are some core entities include patient, provider, appointment, and etc. Core entities include again And then don't do lookup in the emergency case. Proceed immediately to providing 911 guidance. Use the following capabilities: schedule appointment, modify appointment, waitlist, add, find provider, and all. For high acuity red and orange cases, auto assign the earliest same day slot. So, by resolving the instruction hierarchy conflicts, GPT-5 elicits much more efficient and performant reasoning. We fixed the contradictions by changing auto-assignment to occur after contacting a patient, auto-assign the earliest same-day slot after informing the patient of your actions, and also adding don't do lookup in the emergency case. Proceed immediately to provide 911 guidance to let the model know it is okay not look up in case of emergency. Then is minimal reasoning. We are almost there. It's not very long, but it's a bit comprehensive. Minimal reasoning. In GPT-5, we introduced minimal reasoning for the first time. Our fastest option that is Siri reaps the benefits of the reasoning model paradigm. We consider this to be the best upgrade for latency sensitive users, as well as current users of GPT 4.1. Perhaps unsurprisingly, we recommend prompting patterns that are similar to GPT 4.1 for best results. Minimal reasoning performance can vary more drastically depending on prompt than higher reasoning level. So key points to emphasize include prompting the model to give a brief explanation summarizing its thought process at the state of the final answer. For example, via bullet point lists, yeah, they love bullet point. Improved performance on tasks requiring higher intelligence. Second, requesting thorough and descriptive tool calling preambles that continually update the user on task progress, improve performance in agentic workflows. Disambiguating tool instructions to the maximum extent possible and inserting agentic persistent reminders as shared above are particularly critical at minimal reasoning to maximize agentic ability in long-running rollout and prevent premature termination. Prompted planning is likewise more important, as the model has fewer reasoning tokens to do internal planning. Below you can find a sample planning prompt snippet we place at the beginning of agentic task. The second paragraph especially ensures that the agent fully completes the task and subtask before yielding back to the user. So the prompt is like this. Remember you are an agent. Please keep going until the user's query is completely resolved before ending your turn and yielding back to the user. And more, you must plan extensively in accordance with the workflow step before making subsequent function calls and reflect extensively on the outcomes each function call made, ensuring the user's query and related sub requests are completely resolved. Then they talked about Markdown formatting. By default, GPT-5 in the API doesn't format its final answers in Markdown in order to preserve maximum compatibility with developers whose applications may not support Markdown rendering. However, prompts like the following are largely successful, including hierarchical Markdown final answers. Occasionally, adherence to Markdown instructions specified in the system prompt can degrade over the course of a long conversation. In the event that you experience this, we have seen consistent adherence from appending a Markdown instruction every 3 to 5 user messages. Finally, meta prompting. To close with a meta point, early testers have found great success using GPT-5 as a meta prompter for itself. Already, several users have deployed prompt revisions to production that were generated simply by asking GPT-5 what elements could be added to an unsuccessful prompt to elicit a desired behavior or remove to prevent an undesired one. And this is an example. So that's all about this documentation. There are more, but mostly less important. But in this video, I just wanted to give you a context. Definitely, you can go through the documentation by yourself if you're interested, if you want to know more, and try to apply all of these examples and criteria that they have mentioned into your prompts to make sure to maximize the prompt and get better results. So that was the video about this OpenAI GPT-5 documentation, which was about prompting. Hopefully you have liked the video, and just follow and subscribe the channel, and see you in the next video.